You saved my alien child, by ancient law, I'm yours now. The light in the ruins. Lyra Voss had never intended to find anything living in the ruins of Vela Nebula. The abandoned moon was supposed to be devoid of sentient life, just crumbling structures, ancient technology, and the persistent radiation that had driven away its former inhabitants centuries ago. That's what made it perfect for solitary research. She adjusted her atmospheric suit as she descended deeper into the catacombs. The faint blue glow of her scanner cast eerie patterns across the intricate carvings that lined the walls. 6 months of isolation had made her comfortable with the silence, with only the occasional transmission from her research vessel orbiting overhead to remind her that somewhere, civilization still existed. The ruins had once been a magnificent temple complex, built by the Valerians, a species now believed extinct. Lyra had made documenting their culture her life's mission, ever since the Academy had dismissed her theories about their advanced mathematical systems as romantic fantasy. Now, with her research grant running out and pressure mounting to produce results, she was running out of time to prove them wrong. Her scanner beeped, detecting an anomalous energy signature ahead. Unusual, but not unprecedented, pockets of residual energy often persisted in these structures, artifacts of technology she still couldn't fully comprehend. Log entry 173, she spoke into her wrist recorder. Detecting elevated energy signatures in the lower sanctuary. We'll investigate and collect samples for analysis. The tunnel opened into a vast chamber, its domed ceiling partially collapsed, allowing thin beams of the moon's pale sunlight to cut through the darkness. Lyra froze at the entrance, her breath catching in her throat. In the center of the chamber, huddled beneath a shaft of light, was a child. Impossible, she whispered, instinctively checking her suit's oxygen levels. Was she hallucinating? 6 months alone could do that to a person. The child looked up, and Lyra's scientific skepticism evaporated. The being was clearly not human, its skin radiated a soft amber glow, and where hair should have been, delicate crystal formations caught the light, refracting it into prisms across the chamber walls. Its eyes, large and luminous, reflected the stars themselves. Hello, Lyra said softly, knowing her translator might not have the right linguistic patterns for communication. Are you lost? The child shrank back, crystal formations dimming slightly. Lyra took a tentative step forward, then stopped when the child trembled. Instead, she slowly removed her specimen collection kit and pulled out a nutrient bar, standard emergency rations, but it was all she had. Food, she said, unwrapping it and taking a small bite before offering it. It's safe. For several long moments, the child simply stared. Then, with movements so graceful they seemed almost liquid, it edged forward and accepted the offering. The nutrients disappeared quickly, and the child's glow intensified slightly. You're hungry, Lyra said, removing another bar. How long have you been down here? The child didn't answer but accepted the second bar eagerly. As it ate, Lyra scanned it discreetly. The readings made no sense, energy patterns that defied classification, cellular structures unlike anything in her databases. I'm Lyra, she said, pointing to herself. Do you have a name? The child tilted its crystalline head, then slowly raised a hand to touch its chest. A soft melodic sound emerged, something between a chime and a whisper. Lumen, Lyra approximated, unable to reproduce the exact sound. I'll call you Lumen. The child, Lumen, seemed to accept this, offering what might have been a smile. Are you alone here? Lyra asked, glancing around the chamber. Where are your people? A distant rumble interrupted them, dust sifting down from the partially collapsed ceiling. The ruins weren't stable, especially with the seismic activity that had been increasing over the past weeks. Not safe here, Lyra said, offering her hand. Come with me. Lumen hesitated, glancing toward a darkened archway on the far side of the chamber. Another tremor, stronger this time. A section of the ceiling gave way, crashing down mere meters from where they stood. Lumen cried out, a sound like crystal bells shattering, and rushed to Lyra, clutching her suit with surprisingly strong hands. It's okay, Lyra said, lifting Lumen. The child was lighter than expected, almost weightless. Let's get you out of here. She activated her wrist communicator. Hermes, emergency extraction. Lock onto my signal. The automated response came immediately, signal locked. Exit route calculated. Follow guidance markers. Holographic arrows appeared in her visor, directing her back through the tunnels. She moved as quickly as she could while carrying Lumen, who clung to her with quiet desperation. They had almost reached the surface when the most violent tremor yet shook the structure. Lyra lost her footing, stumbling against a wall. Lumen slipped from her grasp, landing hard on the stone floor. One of the crystal formations on the child's head cracked with a sound that pierced Lyra's heart. I'm sorry, she gasped, reaching for Lumen. The child's glow had dimmed dramatically, the broken crystal leaking a luminescent fluid. Hold on, I can help you. Using her emergency medical kit, Lyra sealed the crack with a bioactive gel designed to stop radiation leaks. It wasn't proper treatment, but it stabilized the injury. My ship has better medical equipment, she said, gathering Lumen back into her arms. Just hold on. They emerged into the moon's twilight, the massive gas giant this moon orbited dominating the sky. Lyra's small exploration vessel hummed in the distance, landing struts engaged on the flat plateau where she'd established her base camp. A figure stood between them and the ship. Lyra froze, instinctively tightening her grip on Lumen. The figure was tall, at least 2 meters, with the same crystalline formations as Lumen, but more elaborate, forming what resembled a crown atop its head. Its body emanated a deep blue light, pulsing with what seemed like barely contained power. Stop. The voice resonated directly in Lyra's mind, bypassing her translator entirely. The child. Lumen stirred in her arms, a soft chime emanating from its throat. The tall figure's glow intensified. I helped them, Lyra said, standing her ground despite her racing heart. They're injured. I can provide medical care on my ship. The figure moved closer, movements fluid like water flowing over stone. You fed the child? The question seemed strangely specific. Yes. They were hungry. The figure went still, its glow pulsing in a rhythm Lyra couldn't interpret. Then, slowly, it lowered itself to one knee before her, a gesture that seemed both formal and deeply significant. By the ancient covenant of our people, I am bound to you, it said, voice resonating with something like resignation mixed with grudging respect. You have fed our young in time of need. The debt must be honored. Lyra blinked in confusion. I don't understand. I am Theron, guardian of the last Luminari child, the figure said, rising. Our laws are absolute. The one who provides sustenance to our young in peril becomes family by right. Until the debt is repaid, my service is yours. Another tremor shook the ground beneath them. Theron's gaze shifted to the horizon where dark clouds were gathering with unnatural speed. The harvesters approach, Theron said urgently. They seek the child. Your act of mercy has interrupted their hunt, but they will not stop. Harvesters. Lyra's scientific mind raced to process this new information. Who are they? Those who would drain the light from our kind until nothing remains, Theron replied, stepping closer. Your intervention has bound our fates. Now we must flee, or face extinction together. Lyra looked down at Lumen, who gazed back with stars in its eyes, trusting despite everything. Then she looked at Theron, this strange being now claiming to be bound to her by laws she didn't understand. My ship can break orbit in 3 minutes, she decided. Will that be enough time? Theron's crystalline features shifted in what might have been surprise. You would take us with you. I fed your child, Lyra said simply. Apparently, that means something. I'm not leaving either of you behind. For the first time, Theron's severe expression softened. Perhaps the ancient covenant has wisdom I failed to see. As they hurried toward her ship, the storm clouds darkened ominously behind them. Lyra had come to this moon seeking answers about an extinct civilization. Instead, she'd found its survivors, and bound herself to their fate through an act of simple kindness. The ruins trembled beneath their feet, as if the very moon understood that everything was about to change. Covenant of Worlds. The Hermes broke orbit just as the storm engulfed the landing site, tendrils of dark energy lashing at the ship's shields. Lyra's hands flew across the navigation console, plotting an escape trajectory while her mind still struggled to process the presence of her unexpected passengers. "They're following," Theron announced, standing rigid by the viewport, his crystalline body casting prismatic patterns across the ship's interior. Lumen sat huddled in the co-pilot's seat, the bioactive gel on the child's cracked crystal formation now glowing with an unusual iridescence. "Who exactly are these harvesters?" Lyra asked, engaging the secondary thrusters to put more distance between them and the moon. "Energy parasites," Theron explained, his deep voice resonating in her mind rather than her ears. "Once, they were like us, beings of light and crystalline form. But they grew hungry for more power, more luminance. They discovered they could absorb the essence of others of our kind." The ship's sensors blared an alert. 3 sleek vessels had emerged from the storm, their hulls seemingly absorbing rather than reflecting light. "They've hunted us across 17 systems," Theron continued. "The Luminari were once millions strong. Now, only Lumen remains." Lyra's throat tightened. "Just one child? The last of an entire species?" "Yes. And by feeding Lumen, you have become bound to our fate." Theron's glow pulsed. "Our laws are absolute, the one who sustains a Luminari child in peril becomes custodian until maturity." "I gave a hungry kid a protein bar," Lyra muttered, executing an evasive maneuver as the pursuing ships gained on them. "I wasn't expecting to adopt an alien child and acquire what are you exactly? A bodyguard?" "Guardian," Theron corrected. "Sworn to protect both the child and now, by extension, you." The ship rocked as energy fire grazed their shields. Lyra swore under her breath, the Hermes was a research vessel, not a warship. It wouldn't survive direct combat. "Can you help us escape?" she asked, abandoning her planned course and diving toward the asteroid field that ringed the neighboring planet. Theron approached the console, crystalline hands hovering above the controls. "The vessel is primitive, but I can enhance its capabilities temporarily." His body began to glow brighter, the light seeming to flow from him into the ship's systems. The console displays flickered, then stabilized with new, unfamiliar readings. "What did you do?" Lyra asked, amazed as the ship's speed nearly doubled. "I have shared some of my essence with your technology," Theron explained, his glow noticeably dimmer. "It is costly, but necessary." Lumen chirped softly, reaching out to touch Theron's arm with obvious concern. The Guardian gently stroked the child's crystals, a gesture of reassurance. "Head for the 7th planet in this system," Theron directed. "There is an ancient outpost of our people there, it may still contain defenses we can use." Lyra hesitated only briefly before setting the new course. 6 months ago, she would have demanded more explanations before trusting strangers with her ship and her life. But isolation had changed her, made her more willing to take leaps of faith. "Why did you come to that moon?" she asked as they accelerated toward the distant ice planet. "If you knew it was dangerous." Theron's glow dimmed further. "The Temple of Echoes was once a sacred place for our people. The ancient record suggested it contained knowledge of how to reverse what the harvesters have become. A cure, perhaps. And did you find it?" "No. But Lumen sensed something there, a resonance in the deepest chamber. We were separated during a tremor, then you found the child." The pursuing ships had fallen back slightly but remained locked on their trail. The ice planet grew larger in the viewscreen, its pale surface reflecting the light of the distant sun. "I know something about hunting for answers in ancient places," Lyra said softly. "I've dedicated my life to studying lost civilizations. I thought the Valerians were extinct." "The Valerians were our allies," Theron responded, surprise evident in his tone. They sheltered many luminari when the hunts began. But their protection brought the harvester's wrath upon them as well. The pieces clicked together in Lyra's mind. The mathematical systems I've been studying, they're actually about light energy manipulation, aren't they? The patterns mimic the way your crystals refract light. Before Theron could answer, the ship's proximity alert screamed. One of the harvester vessels had surged forward, unleashing a web of dark energy that ensnared their stern. They're draining our power. Lyra shouted, watching the ship's systems begin to fail. Theron moved with startling speed, placing himself between Lumen and the rear of the ship. Get us to the surface. I will buy us time. As Lyra struggled with the faltering controls, Theron's body began to emanate waves of intense light. The effort clearly caused him pain, his crystalline features contorted as he directed the energy backward through the ship's hull and into the harvester's web. The enemy vessel recoiled, its dark web dissolving under the counterattack. But the victory came at a price. Theron collapsed to his knees, his once brilliant glow now barely a flicker. Lumen cried out, a sound like breaking crystal, and rushed to the Guardian's side. Land, quickly, Theron gasped. I cannot sustain another defense. The ice planet's surface loomed before them, and Lyra guided the damaged ship into what she hoped was a controlled descent. They skimmed over vast white plains before settling with a bone-jarring impact near what appeared to be geometric formations too regular to be natural. The outpost, Theron confirmed weakly. Hurry. With the ship's power failing and sensors showing the harvesters closing in, Lyra helped Theron to his feet while Lumen gathered the few supplies they might need. The trio stumbled through the airlock and onto the frozen surface. The cold hit Lyra immediately, her suit compensating but not eliminating the bitter chill. To her surprise, neither Theron nor Lumen seemed affected by the extreme temperature. This way, Theron directed, leading them toward what looked like a simple ice formation but revealed itself, as they approached, to be an intricately designed structure of crystal and ice, its entrance partially buried in snow. They had barely reached the threshold when the sky behind them darkened. The harvester ships descended like predatory birds, their hulls absorbing all available light. Inside, Theron pushed them through the entrance just as dark energy bolts struck the ground where they had stood moments before. The interior of the outpost lit up as they entered, responding to Theron and Lumen's presence. Ancient systems hummed to life, illuminating a vast chamber filled with crystalline technology far beyond anything Lyra had ever seen. The core, Theron said urgently, guiding them toward a central platform. If it still functions, it can shield us. Lumen broke away suddenly, drawn to a side chamber where a pedestal held what appeared to be a fractured crystal similar to those on their heads. The child reached out, touching it reverently. The heart of light, Theron breathed, his voice full of wonder. We thought it lost millennia ago. Outside, the harvesters had landed and were approaching the outpost, their dark forms visible through the translucent walls. What does it do? Lyra asked, joining Lumen by the pedestal. It contains the essence of our ancestors, their knowledge, their power. It was meant to be our salvation. But it's broken, Lyra observed, examining the fractures in the crystal. Lumen looked up at her with those star-filled eyes, then deliberately removed the patch of bioactive gel from its own injured crystal. The luminescent fluid beneath matched exactly the color of the heart. No, Theron protested, understanding the child's intention. The transfer could kill you. Lumen chimed softly, a sound of determination, and placed its small hands on the broken crystal. Light flowed between child and relic, the fractures in both beginning to seal themselves. The outpost trembled as the harvesters began their assault on the entrance. Darkness seeped through cracks in the walls, tendrils of void reaching inward. Help me, Lyra said to Theron, joining her hands with Lumen's on the crystal. You said we're bound now, so let's act like it. After a moment's hesitation, Theron placed his hands over theirs. The connection was immediate and overwhelming. Lyra felt herself flooded with knowledge, with history, with the collective memory of an ancient species. The mathematical patterns she'd studied for years suddenly made perfect sense, not just formulas but the fundamental language of light itself. "They're not evil," she gasped as understanding washed over her. "The harvesters, they're sick. Corrupted by exposure to void energy from a collapsed star." The heart of light pulsed beneath their joined hands, growing brighter with each beat. Outside, the harvesters breached the entrance, their dark forms surging into the outpost. The cure, Theron realized. It was never lost, it just needed the right catalyst. Lyra understood then why the ancient covenant existed, why feeding a starving child had bound their fates together. The Luminari had evolved to incorporate external elements, to grow through connection rather than isolation. Her human perspective, her compassion, was the missing piece. "Together," she said, focusing her will through the heart. Light exploded outward from the pedestal, washing over the advancing harvesters. Where it touched them, their darkness began to recede, replaced by faint glimmers of their original crystalline forms. Lumen sang, a pure, perfect note that resonated with the heart's energy, amplifying and directing it. Theron added his deeper tones, creating a harmony that shaped the light into healing waves. And Lyra, bound to them by an act of kindness and an ancient law, completed the triad with her human voice, bridging worlds that had been separate for too long. As the light faded, where harvesters had stood, transformed beings now knelt, their bodies partly crystalline, partly shadow, but with the mindless hunger gone from their eyes. "What happens now?" Lyra asked softly as Lumen released the heart, now fully restored. Theron studied her with new respect. "Now, you have fulfilled the covenant 1,000 times over. You have not just fed our child, you have restored our people. Does that mean we're no longer bound to each other?" The Guardian's expression softened. The covenant served its purpose, to bring together what was needed for salvation. But some bonds transcend even ancient laws. Lumen chirped happily, taking both their hands in its small ones. In that moment, surrounded by beings of light and shadow in a crystal outpost on a distant ice world, Lyra Voss understood that her search for knowledge had led her to something far more precious, a found family among the stars. The ruins she had come to study weren't just remnants of the past. They were foundations for the future, a future she would help build, bound not by obligation but by choice, to the light she had saved with nothing more than a simple act of kindness.